Electricity. It's been erratic. But even if it is not Dumsor, do homes, businesses, including hospitals, not deserve a timetable for the load shedding that plunges them into darkness, affecting lives and livelihoods? The ECG insists it has stable national grid, whatever that means to those of you complaining. It says what you are suffering is localized faults, and they are fixing them. All you must do is give them a call, and they will fix it. But is that the case? Last week, Speaker Alban Bagwin abruptly suspended Parliament in tit for tat for President Akufo-Addo's refusal to receive and give assent to the controversial anti-gay bill. He relied on a non-existent injunction application against vetting ministerial nominees. One was filed the next day, but quickly dismissed by the Supreme Court on Wednesday. Will the Speaker now recall the MPs for business, or can the so-called MPP majority force a resumption? At what cost? Is the NDC justified accusing the Chief Justice of bias and doing the bidding of the NPP? President Akufo-Addo launches Smart Schools project. The project will distribute 1.3 million tablets to senior high school students. 1.3 million? I thought we had 2.8 million students there. They are supposed to use it for research, teaching, and learning. It also involves building some 30 smart schools by the end of this year. Political promises that may not be kept, and 70 more in the next 2 years. Smart schools. What are they? Well, teachers have been on strike. The Labour Commission on Friday secured a 7-day injunction on their blind side to halt the action. We hope they are complying to avoid fines and/or jail for contempt. But will that be against their leaders or the over 3,000 teachers in the country? What kind of contempt will this look like? Sector Minister and rumored MPP running mate, Dr. Yao Educhum, takes your questions this morning. I'm Samson, Lardy, Anyenini. Stay right there, because this is your most authoritative news analysis platform, Newsfile. We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And my guest, seated in the studio, Samuel Atacha, MP, Abuakwa South, and Chairman, Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Dr. Kwabena Donkor is MP Pro East and former Minister for Power. Dr. Justice Shremsai, who is lecturer, constitutional law, Gimpa Law School, will also join us. Now, right, not for this first segment, but in the next segment. And we also have Ben Boachi, who's Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning. Right, so we want to understand what is happening as far as the Electricity Company of Ghana and the PURC are concerned. They issued an ultimatum, orders, with timelines for the ECG to comply with. The ECG appears to have complied with some of the orders, but not all of them. The part that the public has been expecting is a timetable. The ECG says they have stable national grid. That clearly explains that they want to say there's no need for a load shedding timetable. They have said that the problems are localized faults that you are encountering. And therefore, if you have any issues, call them. Pick your phone, wherever you are this morning, if you are in darkness, and call them. Or if your area has been suffering this Dumsor or whatever you call it, unstable power supply, erratic power supply, call them. The hospitals that have been complaining about the circumstances in which they can't even decide when to do surgeries because they are unsure what might happen, please pick your phones and call the ECG. Let's see what the response will be. But what does the ECG say? When it says, call us, we will fix the problem, and yet it is issuing releases explaining to sections of the public that your outages are as a result of something and they are working on it. Should they still call you? Begin with you, Dr. Akufo-Addo. What's your understanding of what is happening?
Well, essentially, when you deregulate, you need a regulator. When you liberalize, you need a regulator. The regulator is the referee. The regulator looks at all the angles to the situation and then takes a decision. And in our context, we have two regulators. We have the PURC, which is the economic regulator, and we have the Energy Commission, which is the technical regulator. If a regulator issues orders or directives, the entity or the person at the end of it should comply. If you can, for any reason, can't comply, you immediately go back to the regulator and state your case. Or sometimes you can go to court to quash the orders of the regulator.
That's right.
This is what happens in a regulatory framework. You see, regulation is a craft, and it is important we understand this. The PURC is there to protect the interests of consumers, the interests of producers, and all the players along the value chain. So the PURC is really the referee. And so when the referee issues an order, and it is legal, you have to comply. Mm-hmm. If you don't comply, you are fined. The entity can be fined. And so it is not for the ECG to say we have a stable national network or transmission network, and so they won't comply or decide to choose where they comply and where they do not comply. In any case, ECG is not responsible for the National Interconnected Transmission System.
What is that?
NITS. It's GRICO. It is GRICO that is responsible. So you don't issue statements on things that you are not responsible.
So do I understand you to say that the order should be directed to GRICO instead?
No, please, to ECG.
To ECG?
Yes.
If it is not in control, why should the order be directed at it?
The transmission system is different from the distribution system. The transmission system, to use the local parlance, is just like Kayaye. You give the Kayaye load to carry, and the Kayaye delivers the load from the point contracted to the other point. If the load is half load, the Kayaye will carry the half load. If it's full load, it will carry the full load. So you can't blame the Kayaye for bringing you half load. Because that was what the Kayaye was charged with. GRICO is the transmission company. It will only take to the distributing companies, and there are two of them if you ignore Enclave Power, which is a small private sector entity. It's basically GRICO and ECG and NETCO. Those are the two distribution companies. So they have contracts. What GRICO does is to wheel the power contracted and the power supplied to their substations
for them to distribute to us.
Yes, to us. So how do you blame me if I do not have enough power, if I'm not given enough power to wheel?
So are they really being non-compliant when what they tell you is that it is not that they are shedding power, but these are things that are unpredictable. They are localized outages. How can you have a timetable to that?
That is not factually correct. You see, at the scale, I can understand when one transformer goes off or a transformer is loaded and some of the modern ones will automatically switch off if they are overloaded, etc., or browns out. That I can understand. However, when on this week, on the average, you were shedding at peak 400 megawatts, it cannot be localized. That cannot be localized. Look, you say you are changing or working on your transformers, about 900 of them. You have over 32,000 transformers. So how can work on 900, around 900, have this national impact? It cannot. I can understand ECG, they're a commercial entity, and let us never forget that ECG is a limited liability company.
That is so.
Pure commercial focus. The Ghanaian state wanted ECG to be a company and establish it as a company. So, of course, it will want to put the best foot forward. And so we will capitalize on our situation to explain away the shortcomings to the best we can. I don't blame them for attempting to do that. Any business will do that. And that is why there's a regulator. The regulator will listen to you, listen to other players, and decide that, look, this is it.
Is this what you say is not accurate? Let's listen to the former Minister for Energy, Dr. Matthew Opoku-Prempeh. He spoke this week, now Minister for Energy, right. He spoke to former Minister for Education, rather. He spoke to the press and has appeared to have angered many people. But this is what Dr. Kwabena Donkor is saying is not exactly accurate.
Energy sector, the current power cuts. Some people are saying that you made mention of this. You use this as a campaign against John Mahama, and now we are experiencing a worse situation under President Akufo-Addo. Would it reflect in the 2024 election? Would it be something that people will stand on to vote?
If you are comparing 4 years, MPP administration, energy sector is 300 times better than John Mahama.
But we are still experiencing Dumsor.
Nobody has said we haven't. I'm just saying it's far much better than John Mahama ever did.
You do admit that there's Dumsor.
That is the word you used. I have never used that word. I've promised you that we are going to work on it. And it's not a work that is a single event. It's a process. And we'll continue to work on it for the energy sector to become better.
Have you heard of calls for a timetable?
Ask those who want it to bring it.
They should bring the timetable.
If there is, I haven't seen any timetable. So when
people are calling for it.
Say bring a timetable. What do you mean? The ECG says that there's no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose? Why would somebody get up and wish evil or bad for the country?
So it's not a situation they can have a timetable to.
The minister says, ECG says. If you listen to him,
right,
he says ECG says. He's not saying. Mm-hmm. And to start with, it's not the minister's responsibility to issue a timetable or not to issue.
But you are saying ECG is being untruthful?
Yes, I'm saying that it's not the minister's responsibility. It is the responsibility of PURC. They have the mandate to demand for one. And they have demanded for one. So as for the minister, what the minister is saying, it's like on the sidelines. Because we must be a country of law and order.
If you took PURC as a court, courts can get it wrong anyway.
Well,
So
If
their response is that
if a court gets it wrong, don't you go for appeal?
so they
go to appeal.
they have issued their response in terms of the compliance, and they are saying ultimately that there is stable national grid.
You see, are they responsible for the grid? Are they responsible for the grid? You are not. Gridco is the one responsible for the national grid. And Gridco will ask you that, look, this is the amount of power available today. So knock off 200 megawatts at peak. If you don't, Gridco, in charge of the Systems Control Center, will decide to knock you off. Other than that, there will be a national meltdown, a systems meltdown. And if they load to be, if you are proactive, they ask you to knock off 200, and you do it, it's smoother. If you don't do it, Gridco will not allow this, will not allow a systems meltdown. And so they will just look at your biggest bulk distribution point that can give them the 200 and knock it off you, for you. So this is not new.
So hold on briefly. Ben Boache, thank you very much for joining us on Newsfile. Hello, Ben. Ben, please unmute your mic.
Yes, thank you for having me, and good morning to honorable members in the studio.
Right. So, what do you know? Is the ECG being untruthful to Ghanaians?
Yeah, I think it's been explained time and again that, this is not a situation where you can actually hide the truth. And when the power goes out, everybody experiences it. Beyond that, the people who are working across the industry, majority of them, you can say 99% of them are Ghanaians. All right, so at every level, there is information flow, and we can see what is happening in the system. And to the extent that people would deliberately shift the burden or the actual situation to different events, it's quite intriguing, and we struggle to appreciate what is actually happening in the system. We do know that there is a generation shortfall, and everybody in the power sector is trying to run away from that fact. Nobody wants to communicate that we have a generation shortfall, which is accounting for load being shared. And I don't understand why that struggle. On the ECG side, we have a contract with ECG. Every consumer has a contract with ECG. Not Gridco, not VRA, not IPPs. They are supposed to give us power and provide power for, in most cases, what we have paid for, because we're using prepayment meters. And they have to deliver. There is no excuse telling us that, it is Gridco to blame, it is IPP to blame. You have to give us power, and Gridco also has been quiet all this while, though they are the system operators, and they know that for over almost 3 months now, there have been deficits, and that deficit has to be communicated. And ECG wouldn't be the one to communicate it. They should communicate to the public that there is deficit. They also have the duty to let the country know that we are experiencing, generation shortfall, and therefore we cannot give to ECG what will be optimal for them to serve the country with. But for everybody to be quiet and try to massage the obvious truth, it's incredible, really, to appreciate.
On the 11th of March, this is what the ECG said. It said that it had noticed that 630 distribution transformers within communities across their operational areas have been identified to be full to capacity due to increased demand. This situation may result in blown fuses and broken conductors, causing outages, especially during the peak load period, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. in the affected areas. We wish, however, to assure our customers that transformer upgrading and new projects are ongoing to relieve these customers, these transformers, to ensure a more reliable power supply. Customers within those areas and communities should therefore report any localized outages or voltage fluctuations to the ECG call center, and they provided numbers. Is this a situation you say they can provide a load shedding, a timetable on for the affected areas?
No, if transformers are overloaded, you change them. You can switch them around. So if you have a competent brief of what your operational area is, if my area is overloaded and another area is underutilized, you can switch the transformers. And these are incidences that you can actually tell the consumer ahead of time, that we know that these specific areas we're experiencing overloading, and then you move in to technically assess. If you don't have transformers in your warehouse, you then need to see how you can move some of the transformers around to be able to meet the load. Because if assuming that they are correct, that there is power and they cannot distribute, that is even terrible, because the power has to be paid for once it's generated. And if you have power energizing the transmission infrastructure and the distribution company cannot distribute because of these challenges and inability to smartly move around transformers and get things done, then we are losing much more money, in that respect. But again, we are told by, PURC, which is the utility, union, that they have so many transformers that are across the entire operational area of ECG, and 630 wouldn't be enough to actually, help make us experience the kind of Dumsor that we are seeing around. So, what these technical people are actually saying is that the load shedding that we're experiencing cannot solely be attributed to the so-called overloading of transformers that we are seeing across ECG's operational area. So it comes back to that conversation. Even if you have those challenges, how much of the load shedding that we are seeing is affected by the obvious, generation shortfall that we have, which is not being communicated to us. But we do know that on the average, we're shedding 300, sometimes even 600 megawatts, and we have to cut all the exports to be able to meet, the demand in country. So those are, for me, the significant issues that we have to address. And we are seeing 2012 actually replaying, where we started not communicating what the actual problem was. When gas was not flowing, we thought we could turn on the turbines in Akosombo just to make sure that there is power when we needed to manage the flow of the water. Some of the power plants that could use liquid fuel were just run for a longer period of time. They missed maintenance schedules, and then the problem kept escalating and compounding. We want to avoid that kind of situation. So let's communicate the truth now and begin to address them and manage the situation so that we don't compel the system to stretch itself beyond what it actually can. What GridCo is actually doing, it's not the most optimal thing to do, where they're just constantly monitoring, the demand pattern and shutting down the feeders when ECG is not acting to actually schedule the load. It's not appropriate. I mean, if the engineers slip at any time, then some feeders can cause a lot of problems in localities, and the system can actually even collapse.
All right.
If they don't annually. So we need to have a proper plan.
Right.
And that's
right. Dr. Donko, I'll come back to you. The Public Utility Workers Union.
To give you the exact data for the 11th.
Okay, hold on a minute, because this is tied to the issue he raised. The Public Utility Workers Union of TUC Ghana issued a statement 2 days ago, and they said ECG, being transparent, informed customers of 630 distribution transformers being full to capacity within its operational areas. It was stated that the situation may cause blown fuses and cracked conductors during peak periods. The replacement and upgrade of such transformers have been part and parcel of its operations since time immemorial. But it has never led to public agitation, which has turned into a national outcry with the shout of a load shedding timetable. Indeed, ECG has about 33,000 distribution transformers within its network. Thus, even if the 630 transformers are overloaded, that cannot be the cause of the recent erratic power supply throughout the country. It is worthy of note that at the time the bulk supply points are dumped or ECG is asked to pick limited load, power supply transmitted to ECG is far less than what is available. This is a question that the system operator needs to answer.
On the 11th of March, as you stated, off-peak, ECG was asked to shed 150 megawatts. Off-peak. Peak, they were asked to shed 450 megawatts. So this cannot be transmitters. This is from the Systems Control Center.
They were being asked to shed because of what?
Because of inadequate supply of power. And
inadequate supply due to what?
First of all, there is the issue of fuel. And the fuel issue is also premised on liquidity. Basically, we don't have the money to pay for fuel. We are lucky that in 2024, about 80% of our fuel is domestic gas. If we had the situation that we had in 2014, 2015, where all of our gas was imported, the situation would have been 5 times worse. So first of all, we don't have the money to pay for fuel. Secondly, there is a capacity limitation as we speak. TICO is operating with 1 turbine instead of the combined cycle. TAPCO is doing the same. Amere is being decommissioned. So there is unavailability of a number of plants. Contema plant, in the absence of gas, has to run on diesel. Diesel is far more expensive than even light crude oil that we're complaining about. So there is that problem. Let's admit, as Ben says, let's admit we have a problem. Once we all admit we have a problem, collectively, we can look at how do we resolve this issue short-term, medium-term, long-term. However, we've been trapped by our politics. The politics of excess capacity, the politics of wastage, the politics of that. To the extent that one of the major challenges we're going to have going forward is the need to drive down efficiency and also drive down cost. As we said, the Contema plant has been working for the last 7 years. It is still a simple cycle. And therefore, the cost per generation, unit of generation, is higher than it ought to be if we had done the combined cycle.
All right. Let's listen to a couple of people and the concerns they have raised about the circumstances, particularly key installations like health facilities. Richard Selowit, a General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. We've also heard from Dr. Obute, who is a research analyst. So let's listen to these gentlemen and what they have to say about the circumstances.
It is very important that we put the issue into context. It's not about when only somebody dies, but people may even suffer irreparable damage just because the power has been off. I'm sure you read the Tema General Hospital statement where they said they took 2 hours to solve the problem. When it comes to life and death situations, 2 hours is too long a time. And so it's important that we discuss this issue in that context. Of course, our members across the country are reporting various challenges. Some have had to use torches to complete surgeries during procedures. Some have had to revert to the paper systems because the systems were down. And so it's a challenge. It's a big challenge that is happening across the country. And we need to immediately begin to discuss ways to address that. For us, as an association, we are not bothered about what people want to call it. Dumsor, whatever you want to call it, we don't really bother about that. What is important is that for critical installations as hospitals, they need to know the timing of these outages, especially where we know that they are being done at certain times, and so that they can plan. We've transmitted whatever it is we have to the commissioners. I cannot give a deadline or time to the commissioners. So if the commissioners come out and tell us that by this time we are doing A, B, C, D, I'm more than willing to come out and communicate that to the public. We got information from ECG that it is as a result of 630 transformers that they were injecting into the system. So we said, give us information on that.
Proactively, would you reach out to the GridCo to find out what's happening from their end? Because they're also part of this value chain. If they can't supply, ECG can distribute.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that once we have this information now, that this is the situation, we are going to rope in GridCo as well and talk to GridCo and see exactly what is going on at the GridCo end.
Very, very well managing under the circumstances.
You're working today?
You have some surgeries, but you can't be sure about, this power. Sometimes you're in surgery and the lights go off. And so it affects even planning. Some surgeries can wait, but if you have a cancer surgery, you cannot wait for too long. So that's why, as a medical association, we are calling for schedule. If we knew, then we say, okay, all our surgeries, we're going to have power on Tuesday. So book surgeries. Patients come on admission Monday, we do surgeries for you on Tuesday. But I'm working in the dark. I book you for Wednesday. Wednesday, there's no power. Genset is working all right, but to what extent? Genset is supposed to be a stopgap. Light goes off, it comes in quickly, so there's no break, and the lights come. But, the exception is becoming the rule. We wish and pray things get better for our country.
Wish same.
Right, so you just heard Dr. Promise Sefoga, who is consultant and at the facility and fertility specialist, SHAPE Healthcare, and is vice president of FESOG. And you also heard the General Secretary of the Public Utilities Union, as well as Dr. Seleme, the General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Now, Atacha, because of where you sit in Parliament on these matters, the two of you, we can't be blessed beyond this to have the two of you here help us and help our audience to appreciate these matters. You had something to say about the question of the timetable. Some say this is why we love Atacha. He won't do politics when it doesn't have to be politics. But do you believe that you appreciated the matters thoroughly to be able to make this comment? Let's hear you and come back.
Okay.
It is imperative that if you have a challenge, whether it's a matter of generation deficit or a financial challenge, let the people of Ghana know that there's this challenge and this is the timetable. So people will plan around the challenge you are facing. To make it like it's a fetish that we don't know whether today I'll have power in my area or I won't have power, how people iron their clothes to get to work and the rest of it, and all the challenges. I don't think that's the way to go. It's unprofessional and too messy for comfort.
Yes.
Well, I think there is a problem. And be careful that you don't export the problem to the people who are supposed to have the benefit of your service. That will be double trouble. The people who are supposed to have the benefit of your service, should be informed. That's what I'm saying. Whether it's a generation deficit, financial challenges, or whatever your problem is, you owe it your own integrity to tell the consumers that, look, I'm having these problems. This is how we want to ameliorate your trouble. So I'm informing you in advance that you won't have power from this hour to the other hour. You won't have power from this day or whatever it is. A very credible timetable, having regard to your own challenges, so they plan their lives. But if you say that, I'm having a problem, and I will show you how you also will have a modicum of comfort by way of a timetable, I'm afraid that is a very, very clumsy arrangement we shouldn't encourage. Because You give the power, you distribute the power. You know your distribution challenges. They don't know. So you know how you distribute the power, whether you want to, supply power to this area, maybe Akusumo, Chebi, whatever. You should have a plan. Because if you are not careful, now what is happening is that let me treat the people who consume electricity as I please, because I'm having challenges. This is where I believe it will not...
In complying with the orders of the PURC, they have indicated how many notices they have issued over the period.
Where are they?
Several of them.
Well,
informing the people about the situation and how they are making efforts to resolve them. That is not treating the people with impunity, is it?
Well, I am not aware of what they've done before this demand for timetable or stress strongly. That is my point of view. If the people had a timetable, why would they be disturbing your peace regarding the timetable and all the kind of problems that is associated with the timetable? Where is the timetable? Now I'm educated that the timetable is out there for people to see. Let's do proper education and give information as to the timetable. And then people will plan their lives. I'm listening to a doctor who is saying that for some good reason, surgeries are not safe. In the first instance, I was going to tell the doctor that you need a generator in a hospital setup. No dispute about it. Automatic generator, where when you don't have power from electricity company of Ghana, it switches automatically. Well, in the middle of a surgery, if you are saying that, the power source, I'm not sure, and you are playing lottery with the lives of people. So I crave your kind knowledge that if there is any hospital in Ghana, one important machine that a hospital should have, we should have automatic turn on from ECG power source, and then it kicks in directly. It's a generator.
He spoke about the situation where the response is that it took about 2 minutes for them to be able to switch over.
Well,
and somebody had alleged that a child died as a result of that, and they came to explain that you can't trace the death to the outage. And he says 2 minutes time is very critical when somebody, is under the knife.
Right now, they have an understanding of what they do in the hospitals and the sensitivity of the matter. We have automatic...
Precisely.
I'm a switch. Excuse me to say, I don't want to talk about private matters. So if you want to be antiquated, I'm afraid it's a joke. So off and on, because you are doing something which is life and death.
They talk about cost and cost of fuel.
Well, what is superior to life? So life is life, you can't negotiate life. I don't see why you say in the name of cost, you have the most important machine in your backyard, so that when you are doing an operation and it's a life and death issue, you save lives. So please, what we are trying to argue, we don't have an excuse. It is imperative that those who are looking after lives, whatever the situation, even when we are in normal times and we don't even have Dumsor, a very critical machine, which is a generator, should be in the background, and it should be automatic so that you won't lose life. But let me tell you one of the things I believe is happening that we all agree. I do not believe we should play jokes with the electricity generation. We shouldn't play jokes with it. That is why the Committee on Mines and Energy, we are very serious about this matter. We want to converge and bring all the individuals in the value chain for us to interrogate the matter properly, that we know what the problems really are. And then the experts that some of the members are, we will be able to proffer solutions to some of these things, and then we come to terms with it. When you hide facts, it will come to hurt you. You cannot hide a fact which touches on the lives of the people. I'm being educated that ECG is the end factor in this whole arrangement. They distribute the power. ECG is woefully undercapitalized. I'm being educated. Now, if you know the resources of ECG, for them to play their role as electricity generator in the realm called Ghana, distributor, they are undercapitalized. What is worse, I'm being educated, that in terms of distribution of power, there is a factor of about, somebody was saying, it's even more than 30% of losses in distributing power. What kind of commercial arrangement is somebody operating that you can lose 30% of your product and still survive? These are critical matters we shouldn't joke with. And that's why we need to really sit down and bring ECG to the proper place and then begin to find out what are you doing critically to stop this. Then let's come to the common pool, the cash water.
Hold on there about the key installations like the hospitals.
Yes.
Where the two of you suggest there should be automatic, switch.
Yes.
To alternative power.
Yes.
The Tema hospital I was referring to, it took them 2 hours, actually, not 2 minutes. But don't you appreciate also that state hospitals have issues with money? With money. They are talking about buying fuel. And you talking about the molding, way to change when you lose power. Yeah.
Well, if you look at the issue of money, I believe that there are some critical areas that you should apply money. Whatever budget you have, they are very serious, if you like, integral part of your work. That should not be subordinated to money issues. For example, I can tell you that it is almost like non-negotiable that a major hospital, if the government cannot come in, some arrangement must be found for them to go for a good loan, stretch over time, for them to get one gadget, the absence of which will be life and death.
Okay.
So if people don't want to look at things from the perspective of the sensitivity that they are having, and we always go back to the money issue, it's going to hurt us. They should engineer a solution.
I'll return to you on where you were going to. That's the cash waterfall.
Yes.
Right. But Ben, why are we demanding now that there should be a timetable when, as the ECG explained in complying with the orders of the PURC, that it said that the practice over the years for transformer injection works is to send notices on planned maintenance to customers. ECG does not give notices for individual transformer injections. Upon issuance of notices for planned maintenance, ECG goes ahead to carry out substation maintenance works, underground cable faults, fault repairs, overhead line fault repairs, damaged pole replacement, transformer injection, etc. Why is it that this time we are saying that they shouldn't do what they have been known to do over the years?
I think I'm not a lawyer, but the ignorance of the law is even not funny at all at this point, where PURC's regulation actually stipulates that before you take my light for planned maintenance, you should let me know 3 days ahead of time. So it's not, I don't even need to know what transformer it is. You just need to tell me that I wouldn't have lights because you're going to take my light 3 days ahead of time. So for ECG to now explain why they cannot tell the consumer that they have a shadow maintenance and they need to replace an equipment, it's really sins against the law.
No, that they have said. They've given notice of that. But it is about what is being called for a load shedding timetable. I think that is different from informing the public that we are going to do this work. That's one they have told us, right?
No, I think so. If you look at the directive from PURC, they were very specific. They said, give us the location of all the transformers that are overloading.
Yes.
All right, the transformers that are having problems, including the GPS coordinates of those transformers, so people can know where they fall, and that helps to inform the customer what challenges are localized so that they can expect some of these problems. And that is part of enforcing, the regulation and the law. And if you are not doing that, then you're actually violating the law because you know the 630 transformers that you say are overloaded. So let the people know so that when my light goes off, I can just go and see if there's ECG worker working there on the transformer or something is being done on the transformer. They have refused to do that. And that's where the problem really is. Wow. You need to let the public know if you're going to take their light. If you can't control it because you know that the transformers are overloaded, it tells you that my light can go off anytime. And therefore, having that information also helps me to plan. Not knowing when the light will go off, but I know that at least there's a problem with my transformer and I need to expect that the light will go off at some point. And those who don't have that problem also know that when their light goes off, they cannot be attributed to the transformer being faulty. So that kind of information has to go out to the consumer and let the consumer know.
Thank you very much. And I return to you on your issue of the cash waterfall mechanism matter. What about it? How does it also contribute to what we are experiencing?
I'm being educated that the cash waterfall mechanism is not by legislation. It was a policy of government. So it filtered through cabinet and it's become like a rule of thumb for the way ECG should manage issues. But I'm being told also that first of all, there's such a revenue shortfall at the end of the job being done by ECG. Now what comes into the common kitty and is being distributed is not enough to compensate for the services they are rendering. And I'm being educated, which is very, very serious, that if you press the issue of the cash waterfall mechanism to the point of saying that give this to this, give this to this, first of all, the independent power producer should have it first and the flow of it and the rest of it. What is left for ECG to function is negligible. This is what I'm being told. And if we are not careful and we comply fully with the cash waterfall mechanism, ECG will comatose because it doesn't generate enough money to be operational. This matter our committee wants to interrogate because we wouldn't want to have a policy which is so stringent that ECG, with all the challenges, complying fully with the cash waterfall mechanism, will run aground, and then we have double trouble. So I am very much concerned about some of these matters which are coming to the fore, and we need to look at it critically. If we are not careful, I respect what the regulator is doing. The regulator is actually a creature of law. If you pay regard to Act 538, there's nothing that PURC is doing which is untoward. But be very careful that in a mechanical approach to the issues, the distributor will not collapse. So let's look at it from these perspectives.
In respect of that, just a small one before we proceed. You see their compliances. Of course, there is, I think, one or two that the deadline is not yet kicked in. It's in April 2 or so, thereabout, or 8. Are they justified if they decided that, look, we have contracts with certain people, with certain entities, and we cannot be making certain disclosures under this cash waterfall mechanism because we may be, as it were, breaching the law in that regard?
Well, I do not know of any disclosure to a regulator that would hurt you with the greatest of respect. You see, because I do not see any decent regulator using the confidential material to your disadvantage. Perhaps what they want to do is to peruse certain issues and proffer advice.
Okay.
But if we credit the regulator with decency, that the information I'm exacting from you, I want to use it for probably to help you perform better, then I don't see why it should be a problem at all.
All right.
So they shouldn't withhold critical information from the regulator because they will offend against the law.
Thank you very much. Yes, Dr. Kwabena, if you are talking about that or something else.
You see, I am extremely worried about the perception of this cash waterfall mechanism. I'm extremely worried. The cash waterfall mechanism is an administrative tool, a managerial tool to manage a situation. And what is the situation? The situation is that, one, we are under recovering cost. Ordinarily, and that was why I stated earlier on that ECG is a limited liability company.
That's so.
When a limited liability company...
Though wholly owned by the state.
Yes. Is undercapitalized, the shareholder has an obligation to inject capital.
No dispute about it.
And yes, currently the state is injecting some money, but not as capital, but to support operations. The Ghanaian state is paying about 250 million cedis every month for fuel because of the contracts for fuel supply. And that is still not adequate. And therefore, there is a debt burden exceeding $1.5 billion on the sector. The debt burden is that Ghana Gas is not being paid by VRA. VRA is not also being paid by ECG, so it's cascading. There is that debt burden. But we are lucky, at least we own the gas, apart from what we have to pay to ENI and what we have to pay for tallow. If we were totally dependent on N-gas, that would have been a disaster. So we should not, and the cash waterfall mechanism was discussed and agreed upon by all parties. And therefore, if your allocation, and it's about prioritization, the number one priority is fuel supply, pay IPPs. Then we come to the entities who will need money for the administrative running. If you are saying that I choose to pay a particular fuel supplier as against those in the pool, then it raises issues. ECG has a very difficult situation. You are under recovering costs. Remember, a few years ago, even for fuel supply, petroleum products, anytime the BDCs brought fuel and government didn't give them the right price, there was under recovery that the state paid.
Right.
So we are basically under recovering costs. We have two things. One, we have to drive down cost by being far more efficient along the value chain.
All right.
To re-examine the impact of our currency, the depreciation of the cedi at 13.12 today, even at the interbank rate. And when all your payables for fuel are dollar denominated,
yes,
your payables to IPPs are dollar denominated, and you have so managed or mismanaged your economy that, let me withdraw economy and say your monetary policy, that it is impacting on physical depreciation of your currency, we are going to have this problem.
Ben, 1 minute. Where do we go from here?
I think the power sector, challenges are deepening. And the earlier, we communicated that and found a way to deal with it, the better it will be for all of us. And I have indicated time and again that, the responsibility of the state to pay for the inefficiency is actually hurting everybody, hurting the Ghanaian public, where $1 billion every year is spent to pay for electricity bills, that are not generating any impact for the Ghanaian people. And that, for me, is something we have to address to ensure that we can rather divert those resources into development projects and fund the education, the health, infrastructure that we actually need, rather than paying for electricity that has been consumed by somebody else. So we need to get the utilities communicating the problem properly to us and get Ghanaians to plan. Because at this point also, it's difficult for government to now go and say, we're going to take charge of every deficit in fuel supply, because the budget may not be able to accommodate that at this point. and therefore facing reality and planning for it so that we can improve over time and be able to collect the revenues and take care of fuel. Fuel supply to the power sector must translate into revenue.
All right.
That can be recycled in the industry.
All right. Thank you very much. Ben Boakye is with ACEP, Africa Center for Energy Policy. Of course, I am picking a few of your messages here, and then we'll end on the note of hearing NAPO and others again on why it may not be useful not to have a timetable. This one from Mark in the USA. He says, I had a dental surgery done at Kolebu about 8 years ago. The lights went off right after the surgery, and the doctors used the lights on their cell phones to clean me up. They had a generator, but there was no fuel in it. Atachia is talking about automatic generators or switches in hospitals in Ghana. Okay. Well, people have them anyway. Frank Anderson Jr. says that taxpayers' money spent recklessly on that pit, i.e. supposed National Cathedral. Well, we're told that stones will be raised and raise the money to pay for it. We're living in biblical times, right? Says it's enough to acquire state-of-the-art generators for government hospitals. We just don't value human life. Simple. Acquire generators with the cathedral money. Your churches will not agree with you. Right. And let's be frank about it. They play the ostrich all the time, and they get into the politics of all of these issues and put pressure on the politicians to sometimes also do what is not useful for all of us. Now, listen to this. And we are taking a break on this note. We return to check whether the Speaker will call the House back or the NPP MPs will force the House to be recalled because the injunction that the Speaker was talking about, the application that did not exist even at the time he was referring to, has been quickly dispatched. And thanks to Dr. Akufo-Addo, who is MP Pro East and former Minister for Power.
It appears that government just doesn't care. It's not mindful of the crippling effects of this Dumsor on our economy. All they are interested in is chop-chop. They are not interested in resolving the problem.
In 2006-2007, we experienced the same challenges. The government led by President Akufo focused, and within 8 months, 6, 7, 8 months, the problem was over. It was prioritizing the expenditure of the government. This problem has been with us since 2011, 4 years. Where is the priority of the government?
The demonstration organized.
Sensitivity of Obama's government. This is not to topple government. We don't advocate for a regime change this way. We are going to vote next year, and we are going to vote them out massively. That is good governance. That is partisanship. We are going to democratically remove Obama from power. Not do this demonstration, but the demonstration is to demonstrate to Obama and Ghanaians that what is going on is bad. If you are feeling the heat, like Ghanaians are feeling the heat, if you are buying electricity and they are having it for free, if your salary, you are spending 60% of your salary on electricity bills, then you understand what I'm suffering. I am suffering.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. The standoff between the Speaker of Parliament and the President. We'll continue that discussion today too. We dealt with it last week here on this platform, and almost all my guests, the lawyers who were here last week, were unanimous, agreeing that the court has the power to bring forward all the processes that have been filed and to even deal with the cases with dispatch so that the matters will be resolved. Still here in the studio, Samuel Atacha is MP Abuakwa South and Chairman, Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Dr. Kwabena Donkor is MP Pro East and former Minister for Power. Doctor, you're a member of the committee, right?
Yes.
Right.
Senior member.
Dr. Justice Shrem is Senior Lecturer Consultant, Senior Lecturer Constitutional Law, GIMPA Law School. Justice, thanks very much for making time to join us.
Thank you very much, Samson, and good morning to my learned senior and Dr. Kwabena Donkor, who are in the studio.
Right. So, there have been two cases that were filed, one filed in 2023 and another filed in 2024 in March against the anti-gay bill and the processes or whether or not it passes constitutional muster. There's one by Amanda Odoi, earlier filed in 2023, June or July, and there's one filed by Richard Delasky, filed in March, on the 7th of March, or yes, that is it. And there are two applications for injunction in that matter pending. They were all filed on the 7th of March, 2024. The president had earlier intimated that because of the pendency of those suits, not injunction applications, he felt that he didn't have to take any step. Then the second suit was filed, and then the injunction application was also filed. And the presidency issued a statement explaining why it has refused to accept the bill from Parliament. On account of that, the Speaker of Parliament, Abam Bagwin, also, in what is an obvious tit for tat, decided that MPs who had been vetted will not be approved because Roxy Nelson Dafiamapo, an MP, also had issued a writ asking for a number of things, more particularly that the president, in his communication to the public, had indicated that certain ministers had been relieved of their post, and then he purported to reassign them without recourse to parliamentary vetting, and he insists that they must be brought to Parliament to be vetted. Ni Papo Akufo-Addo, lawyer for Dafiamapo, filed an injunction on that matter, one on the 21st of March, another on the 25th of March. The 21st March one is what was dealt with on Thursday. And the 25th March injunction application was deemed not to be proper. So the injunction is gone. What should happen? Let's begin with you, Justice. But first, let's hear what Godfrey Dame had to say about the development.
Dr. does not understand the workings of the rules of court. An application for a length of time for hearing of the matter comes in when you have time, a certain or fixed time, and you seek to bring the date for it. That is when you are abridging the time, you are bringing it forward. Where no date has been fixed, it is absolutely the duty of the matter to cause the matter to be fixed for hearing. So I specifically wrote a letter to her ladyship and asked any date for hearing. That's a letter on record, as is done by all practitioners when they are sought. all practitioners who know the workings and rules of court. And indeed, I have done this many times, even recently in the Supreme Court case 2011. That time, Eddie Tamaklo was my student at the Ghana School of Law. It's a matter of record. I applied for an extra hearing of this famous Vance for France matter. So clearly, when the eligible speak this way, it shows a total lack of understanding or total ignorance about the rules of court.
Right. So, as far as you're concerned and your knowledge of the law that you teach, did the Attorney General do anything wrong in writing to the Chief Justice asking for an expedited trial or hearing of the injunction application?
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson. The Attorney General did nothing wrong when he wrote a letter to the registrar or the Chief Justice to abridge the time for hearing the matter. But the question, to put the question that way, would also mean that we have left out some very fundamental, concerns or issues which need to be discussed or need to be considered. There's something called discretion in the Constitution of Ghana. Discretion is very essential to leadership. I mean, if you're in government or if you're a public official, you definitely would need to have some discretion. Discretion is actually the essence of power. So anyone who has power necessarily must have discretion to go one way or the other. So that is the issue on discretion. However, the ultimate essence of law, is certainty and predictability. So when, for example, we say the first law of physics or the law of that, what we are basically saying is that there must be, the thing is so certain that it should cut across circumstances and it should apply evenly across the border. So that is the fundamental essence of law. Now, the reason why I'm raising this issue is that the Attorney General definitely has a discretion to abridge or to cause a case, the time for hearing a case to be abridged. And he ought to do that by writing to the CJ or the registrar.
First of all, substantively, there was no time for the hearing. So was there anything to be abridged?
Well, I was going to go to that. And that would have to lead us to the changes in the practice in the Supreme Court. And you remember, I think later last year, there was a directive from the Chief Justice, which indicates that when you file a case, contrary to the previous practice, where you'll be given a specific date on the phase of your motion before the motion even goes out, this time around, we don't have dates on the processes. Rather, there is a note which is often attached indicating that the Chief Justice the registrar would issue a hearing notice. And the note, that statement itself is not clear.
Within 14 days upon service.
Yeah, upon service. And then it says upon request again. So the question is upon whose request, and how would the person who has issued the motion, know that there has been a service on the other party for him to make that request? And if it's supposed to happen within 14 days, then the notice itself is vague. But that is where I was talking about discretion and some of these directives. So the essence of law is certainty, and that's why we have something called constitutionalism. If you have a discretion to do something, the purpose of law is to, as much as possible, limit the discretion so that we don't have some of these things coming where discretion may be exercised capriciously, wrongly, or even vaguely. So what we seem to have here is that we have increased the discretionary power that we are giving in the administration of justice, to the extent that previously, while both parties would automatically know the date of hearing, and then if someone wants it to be heard earlier than that date, we'll make a formal application to the court, which application will be served on both parties, and then the argument will be taken as to whether there should be an abridgment or not, and the two parties are present to discuss or argue that for the court to make an informed decision. Now, the current arrangement actually takes away any of these things. So a person will write a letter to the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice would listen to only that person's concern and either abridge the time or refuse the abridgment. And then at the end of the day, a date is fixed, which may or may not be convenient for the other party. And if it's unable to come to court, the case will be heard. So if we talk about whether the AG can do that or has the right or power to do that, indeed, he has the power to do that and is the right thing to do. However, we have created a system which basically is making it impossible for a hearing to be fair, which is fundamental to our jurisprudence, that whenever a decision is going to be taken, whenever a case is being heard, even every process filed in the case, whether the party is even concerned or not, should be served so that there will not be a situation where a decision will be taken.
So what's the problem? What's the problem? The Attorney General writes a letter to the court or to the Chief Justice or the Registrar asking that I want an expedited hearing of the application. Then a date is set for, that was Wednesday, the 27th. Now, when that date is set, all parties are notified about the Wednesday hearing, except that there was some problem with the plaintiff's service on the plaintiff. But as we know, if a bailiff comes to you, tries to serve a process, and you try to evade, once they drop it and you are seeing it, they drop it before you, it is good service. So what is the point here? You write a letter, but the date for the hearing is communicated to all the parties before the case is heard. Is that not it?
That is so.
So what's the problem?
What's your question again? What is the problem?
What's the problem? You raise questions of fairness.
Yeah, my question goes to, so what happened is as a result of the new regime of getting a date for processes in the Supreme Court. I mean, you would agree with me that if it were the old regime where the date would be printed on the process, then the AG would have filed an application for what? Abridgment of time. And you raised the issue that there was even no time. So how do you file an application for abridgment? That is exactly why the AG couldn't file an application for abridgment of time and had to what? Write a letter, because the new regime doesn't give you any basis to even make that kind of application for abridgment of time, because there's actually no time to abridge. So, and once the letter went, on a very good day, the determination of whether the abridgment should be granted, okay, must be subject to argument. Is that not so? I mean, is that not so? If you want to take a decision whether to abridge, because we know that it should be within 14 days after service, okay? And within that 14 days, we are assuming that all the parties will know the day on which the process has been served, and they will start counting what? There are 14 days. What it means is that then the party would have to apply to the courts, to find out when the other party had been served. And that inquiry, you and I know, can take a couple of days. So what I'm saying is that the confusion happening now is not necessarily because of what the Attorney General did by writing a letter, and it's also not necessarily because the date has been determined and notice has been served. It is because of a bigger issue, which is creating a situation where there's very little, not hearing of both sides for a decision to abridge time to be taken. And you see, I'm making this point because most of the time we pick on specific instances without looking at the bigger, picture. So what I'm saying is that this problem would not have come up everywhere in the regime which gave both parties the opportunity to file for an abridgment, and the other party will be heard, an argument to be taken in respect of the abridgment. So that is the point I'm making, not necessarily to say the AG was right or wrong, or not necessarily because the date was given or notice was not given fairly. But this problem, you and I know, and I believe my senior in the studio, Honorable Atasha, would agree that this situation will not happen everywhere, having the old regime in place. So I think it is time that we probably have to reconsider this, the new regime of filing thing. That is what I think the issue should be.
So when you look at the process of injunction applications, the injunction application or the notice comes together with an affidavit and your arguments, what we call the statement of case. The opposing side will also file their facts in the affidavit and then file their arguments in the statement of case. Very often, judges will say, that is enough. I don't want to hear any more argument. I can give a decision. Is there a question of lack of fairness because Dafiamakpo and his lawyer were not in court?
No, I think the question is not lack of fairness because they were not in court. I mean, the court could have actually decided the motion without hearing any argument. I think that is the position of the law. The court could have looked at the affidavit evidence alone and make a decision.
Or without the motion being moved. It is settled law that the judge can decide it.
Yeah, the court can decide even if the motion is not formally moved.
That's right.
And these days, we are even advised not to move it in terms of argument, just move it, by a formal, So that is the position of the law. The court could have decided that. But we would agree also that the issue about being present is now what is in dispute because the people are, the appellant or the applicant are saying that they were not aware. They are claiming they are not aware of the date. And even though the court was satisfied that they have been duly notified, my point is that once the other party is aware and has come, and that is why sometimes you would agree that a process, a decision of the court will be set aside, that the other party is not given an opportunity to be heard. Now, after the case has been decided, assuming that what happened in court, there's now new evidence that the other party, that is the Dafiamakpo, has not been properly served. You would agree that that would be a valid ground for vacating the decision of the court.
So,
right. I'm just saying that assuming.
Right. So my question so far is to come to the point where I'll ask you to educate the public. Was anything amiss in the application being determined and dismissed? Did something go wrong?
No, you cannot sit at home, right? And draw. The presumption is that once the court considered all this, then nothing has gone wrong. So in terms of the procedure that I know, in terms of all the things, my knowledge of the law, nothing has gone amiss as at what we have on the records of the court. That is the point I'm making.
Right.
But then the question is, you see, the question ought to be bigger than what we are limited to what the rules of court say. But we also know that administration of justice, as we say, justice must be seen to be done, not
manifestly
just done, but it must be seen to be done. Because when you administer justice in such a public interest manner and is raising legitimate concern about whether there was a fair hearing, the answer to that kind of objection is not necessarily to rely strictly on rule of law. That is why I began my submission by looking at a bigger issue than this.
Okay.
So, nothing is wrong as what has been done, but there are concerns which I think are legitimate based on what regimes we are running.
Okay. What will be your topmost pick on the concerns that have been raised? I'll not predict any one of them for you. Which will be your major concern in this case?
No, my major concern is that, you see, and it has to do with the way the Attorney General is going about the issue, the matters. So, for example, it is within the Attorney General's discretion to decide which case to abridge, which case to abridge. So there are two cases. In both of the cases, he is defendant in case 1 and case 2. Now, the question is, what informed the Attorney General to choose case 2 in respect of which he asked for abridgment of time without doing the same in respect of what? Case 1. That obviously is a question which needs to be explained, because as I understand it, the Attorney General is not an Attorney General for, he's not a partisan Attorney General in terms of Attorney General is for the Republic. He represents all of us in cases when Attorney General is even in court. He could be called upon to give his opinion on matters, and his words basically are also valued more than any other lawyer in the case. So, and that is based on the understanding that an Attorney General is a person who has the whole public interest, is the repository of the public interest as far as law is concerned. And that is why he's also the Minister of Justice. So the question that I would ask is, why would he choose to abridge one of the two cases when he is defendant in both? And both of them have, significant impact on administration of government, both in the legislature and in the executive. That is my concern in this.
I am Attorney General. There are 1,001 cases before me. I determine which one is of, pressing need to attend to. Why should I be explaining that to you? And don't we know that Parliament was suspended by the Speaker because of what he said was the Dafiamako injunction? The fact, though, as I keep repeating, is that by the time the Speaker said there was an injunction, there was none. Why should he be explaining to you which of the cases he chooses to want to be heard quickly?
Well, it is not a question of the Attorney General explaining to us, but it's in respect of people, or we the people, asking questions. And when, by the fact that he occupies a public office, when questions of this nature come up, I think there must be some element of explanation that, well, I chose case A to abridge the time in respect of case A because of this and these factors, which are not present in respect of what? Case B. That is what we expect to hear, so that the public concerned that he's choosing the side of the debate unfairly or unreasonably would be laid to rest.
But the Attorney General advises the government. And the Attorney General knows where the President stands on the two matters. So was it not a matter of, consequence that he would want to do what the President puts premium on?
Yes, Samson, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem that, the Attorney General wrote a letter to the Speaker a couple of days ago. And in the letter, what was he trying to do? He was trying to advise, Parliament on what ought to be done. And that, I think, because he considers it his duty to advise not just the executive, but also anything that affects the government as a whole, because he's the Minister of Justice. Now, the question is, why, if he knows where he stands, if the Attorney General knows where he stands and is proud of where he stands and want everybody to know that I stand with this side of the debate, I am more concerned about not having the bill in question passed. I'm more concerned about the President's interest as against Parliament's interest. Why was he writing the letter he wrote? Why was he seeking to advise the Speaker? Why was he advising the President in particular way? So it is these inconsistencies in his stance. In one way, he seems to represent the interests of the government, as a whole. When I say government, I mean all the arms of government as a whole. In another instance, he seems to be, in the same set of facts, he seems to be more interested in the side of the President than the other side of the debate. And this is what is making people ask these questions. That
right.
Is it Attorney General for all of us, or is Attorney General for one side?
So address this for me quickly, and then you hold on. I will return to you on a more substantive question, that we know the general principle of law on the effect of served applications for injunction. The general principle of law is that once served, you stop. You don't do anything to overreach the court. But don't you join the exception that is being canvassed and more vigorously by people like Oliver Barker-Vormawor about not using injunctions to stop the performance of a constitutional or statutory duty. But you will come to that later. Now I'm asking, would you say the NDC is justified in any way by attacking the Chief Justice and the courts the way they have done? That she's biased, literally, that she's doing the bidding of the NPP by not paying attention to the applications that were filed on the 7th of March, but rather dealing with the applications that were filed on the 21st and 25th, is it? Yeah?
So the question really is not whether you agree or not. I think the question should be whether you understand the position being taken as from, that is what the position that NDC, has taken. And that is why I began my submission by explaining that there is a more, there's a bigger issue, there's a bigger concern, which is, so the problem did not just come up, the problem is inextricably hooked with something which has nothing to do with this particular case. It is hooked up with something which is new, which has created or has widened discretion. So if you look at it from that perspective, then basically what I'm trying to say is to point out the fact that we need to administer justice in a more, comprehensive manner, and that clearly is an issue which we need to look at, and that is the point that I made earlier about.
Yeah, my question to you is, from where you sit, I don't want to read and repeat the statements in the NDC's release. Are they justified? Their basis was that 2 injunction applications were sitting before the court filed on the 7th of March. She ignored those and then decided rather to expedite hearing on those that were filed on the 21st and 25th. Therefore, she's exercising discretion capriciously. These are their words. Arbitrarily, she's being biased, and she's seeking to facilitate Akufo-Addo's agenda.
No, in this particular, case of this particular case, we've just explained that it is not the Chief Justice's, making. Chief Justice the registry gives timeline for cases. What we are looking at is an abridgment application or a letter of abridgment which has been brought by the Attorney General, which the Chief Justice has to act on. If there was no application for abridgment in respect of the other cases, I honestly do not see how the Chief Justice is supposed to, know the need for urgency and be able to abridge the time for that. And even if she did that, that would be that would even be capricious in the sense that then is acting out of authority, because there's a rule, a general rule, that the matter will be brought within a certain amount of time. One person has applied for abridgment, which is before you would have to act on that particular abridgment. So if the Chief Justice acted on that abridgment and there was no application for abridgment from the other, and I'm using abridgment in a vague word, the letter, if there was no letter in respect of the others, I believe that then the Chief Justice would not even have the authority or a legitimate basis for bringing that forward.
Okay, thank you. Hold on there for me now. Let me come to Atachi and begin with you. Yeah. Now, a very good friend of mine, and whom I practiced in chambers with some time ago, Akufo-Addo, he practices both in the UK and in Ghana. He wrote an article on Independence Day.
Yes.
And said, Ghana's parliament has placed an independence bomb on the president's desk. That's the anti-gay bill. With the Supreme Court being called on to, hopefully, act on the disposal unit.
That's very interesting, because you see, we are supposed to function by law. Anything less than that is disaster and aberration. This constitutional dispensation, we should look at it from the perspective of supremacy of law, not the pleasures of men and how they feel. So if something is supposed to be done by the president, by operation of law, he should look at the law, the parameters of the law, and act upon it. Because you can't have a president acting unconstitutional and be comfortable. And so is everybody in the situation, the speaker and even the judiciary. So that's how I see what is unfolding. And I find it very, very, very interesting and how we need to uphold the Constitution and the supremacy of law for our own peace. If not, it could be very, very chaotic. That's how the little response I'll say to this.
We all clamor for speedy disposal of suits. And we say even our system does not encourage investment because suits takes forever.
Yes.
And people have heard me refer many times to this small family land matter that took 40 odd years to determine. And in 2014, when the Supreme Court eventually finished that case, Chief Justice Wood described it as a parody of justice.
Precisely.
But will it be fair in the circumstances we find ourselves where one party says, I want the case to be dealt with quickly. And you are sending notice to the one who actually brought the matter. And you are calling them today to come tomorrow. Shouldn't you give them a bit of time?
Well, they should be given time if and only if, with the greatest of respect, they've not placed before them their documents. That is all I want to say. You see, let's respect the new dispensation. The new dispensation, with the greatest respect, is not the case that the presence of a human being before a court of law will improve the documents duly filed and the law.
Sometimes substantially it does.
Well, if and only if there's necessity for the judges to say that, Samson, with the greatest respect, can you address us on this point?
That's right.
But they can dispense with all that, and it's just the paper arguments they'll look at and deal with it. So this is what I'm seeing, because in those days that we didn't have this new dispensation, you need to be physically present and move a motion and argue and urge upon the court all the authorities you believe should make you win your case.
And we are told Peter Lardy stood on his feet for 2 days.
Yes.
Arguing one matter.
Precisely.
And the court entertained him. Today, they'll give you 30 minutes, even if you are lucky.
If you are lucky. In fact, less. But right now, the statement of case that you stress, I want to drum it home because the general public should know. They didn't let my lawyer speak. And that is why I've been given an unfair treatment in the court. You see, they want to curtail the tendencies of lawyers speaking for so long, rather than reducing their thoughts together with the law in very simple terms called the statement of case. So if my good friend who is complaining about he being short-served, and it depends on the discretion of the judges, that look, in order to give him time, he's been short-served. Can we give him 2 days to return? I don't see how that could hurt a fly. I don't see how that could challenge the processes. And I didn't see the emergency that, if the case was not determined now, something serious will happen. So for me, in order to expand the parameters of fairness, I was say, well, the gentleman is alleging that he's been short-served. Can we give him, 2 days to come back to us? That will curtail some of these, accusations
in the courtroom. It would appear that the judges may have been angered.
Yes.
By the testimony of the bailiff.
I heard so.
Because the bailiff was asked, you were supposed to have served this party to come to court. Have you served? He said, I went to the offices of Addo and Addo legal attorneys, lawyers for Dafiamapo. When I got there, I was told that the lawyer says we shouldn't accept any service on this case.
Yes.
So he dumped it, dropped it, and left. We know now from CCTV footage with an audio that the bailiff was untruthful. but at the time, the court did not have the opportunity to know the other side.
Precisely.
So they were unhappy that a lawyer would treat a Supreme Court process like that.
Yes.
And the Attorney General actually called on the court to look at that matter as misconduct on the part of the lawyer.
Yes.
And refer the lawyer for punishment.
Yes. So if you look at it from that perspective, it was a bit emotive in not giving the judge, the lawyer, the opportunity to come. And the facts are showing that indeed it is not the fault of the lawyer. But let me tell you that if you pay regard to all the, if you like, paradigm shift that Dr. Muhammadu Bawumia wants to bring to bear in this entire country called Ghana, going digital. Yeah, you don't need a bailiff now to bring to the attention of anybody that, look, come to court. Because the system could just go via,
electronically.
Electronically. And then you have it. You can even have the processes on your phone, and the proof of service and the rest of it will be curtailed. But be that as it may, I will say one thing that the NDC should bear in mind. The presence of the lawyer will not improve upon the law by this current dispensation. They can even say that, look, nobody should come to court. Don't waste your energies. We will give them a date for the ruling. And the rules have changed.
Yeah.
So we should come to terms with that. But I am even surprised that people are not appreciating the move of the Attorney General. A most egregious error has been committed. No dispute about it. That the whole House of Parliament should be suspended by reason of the fact that they shouldn't do business, there's an injunction. It turned out that there was no injunction. Therefore, the confusion that what my good friend, Honorable Defi Amapo, had filed impinges on the House looking at the issues of the ministerial nominees who have been vetted for approval is a humongous situation.
Ministerial nominees who have been vetted for approval.
Yes.
And which category does not include those he has concerns about.
Yes.
Because those he has concerns about, he wants the court to compel the president to bring them for vetting.
Precisely.
The president is not bringing them for vetting.
Yes. So therefore, if you have a serious Attorney General, and I believe we have one, who went into the situation and advised the Speaker on the matter. I have the letter here. I don't believe we should go through all these matters. Now look, it is not the case that there was any injunction pending. The Speaker was trying to be law-abiding in a vacuum. There was nothing pending. And even if anything was pending, if you pay regard to what my good brother filed, I have it here, the issues are materially different if you look at his reliefs. So I don't see why anybody should fall the
except that his reliefs included an interlocutory injunction.
Yes.
Against the vetting of even those who do not fall in the category that he was against.
The absurdity is monstrous, to be very honest. That if the substance of your case, should invent another area which is not related to your case and frustrate it, then the mischief should be punishable. That's how I see it. You see, because you can't play games with the court. And by extension, you cannot use your technical skills, to even deceive Parliament. It's a very, very serious matter. And if the Attorney General wants to, if you like, remedy the wrongs, and he wants the case heard expeditiously, and fairness and the rest of it, you can talk about.
Okay.
But essentially, I am of the view that the new dispensation does not require the presence of a lawyer for the case to be improved.
So you say, for example, which is also correct.
Yes.
That they could simply have issued the hearing notice to them and they will appear but they will not make any arguments.
At all.
You just appear to hear your ruling.
That's what it can be.
So why didn't they take this posture in the circumstance, but rather heard arguments from Thaddeus Sori, representing the Speaker, and also Godfrey Dame?
You see, I am of the view that it was a bit of a charged atmosphere and it was a bit emotive because they saw the dropping of the lawyer refusing to accept service as an affront to the dignity of the courts. Albeit, the evidence showed up that that was not the case. So that is what happens.
But judges must have the composure not to allow such emotions.
I agree with you 100%. The same argument I was making for my very revered speaker, that the letter emanating from the office of the president should not drive him to that position in which some of these matters occurred. So when we come to places of dignity and responsibility, we should manage our emotions well because the consequences...
Let's speak to the non-lawyer amongst us. And people are equally interested in the non-legal aspects of this matter. Yes.
Certainly.
Yeah. Finally, from the NDC perspective, and I'm a proud member of the NDC, we had a situation, first of all, on the e-levy, where people went to court. The president, notwithstanding
the pendency of the application for
injunction, went ahead and assented to the e-levy. Remember, e-levy was so divisive.
Very much.
So he did that. So for us, that's a precedent. Then it comes to this anti-gay legislation. The same precedent, if it had been a different precedent, it would have even been slightly different, says there's pendency of this in court, and therefore I'm not going to even receive it. And for me, the president was wrong. No matter the legal gymnastics you people will conjure, he was wrong not to receive the letter. If the transmitter had been received, then he has options. I can then state that in a letter to Parliament that because of this and that, I'm not in a position, or even refer to a Council of State as provided for under the Constitution, but to refuse. And the tone of that letter from his secretary just annoyed all of us, whether in this or MPP. In fact, all MPs I spoke to, including MPP MPs, were so angry with the tone of the letter, the wording of the letter. And you see...
Why are you people surprised about that? Because in Parliament, the two sides who must guard the dignity and power of Parliament, which is almost sovereign, you have diluted it and allowed the presidency at all times, not in this regime, to supersede even Parliament. The president has the votes of not everybody. In Parliament, it's represented all Ghanaians. So you have cheapened it.
Well, the nature of our adversarial politics has led to that, and it is not the best. I'm the first to concede it is not the best. But most importantly, as a people, as a nation, remember we are a nation building. We must learn from our traditions. And the secretary to the president, in my opinion, has led the president down big time. Why do I say this? The president, as the two of you have just agreed, is human. He can be emotive. The Supreme Court has displayed that tendency, and my chairman is also attributing the same tendency to the speaker. So let's say the president has been emotive. You are his chief advisor as his secretary. What do? You stay that document over. You do not write the letter. The president may even use worse words. But it is your duty. And it is not by error that quite often they prefer diplomats. KD, or say, Akufo secretary was a diplomat. To handle these emotions In our tradition, let me use the Asante-Hene for example. When Asante-Hene sits in state, adjudicating over a matter, traditional matter, and his temper begins to rise, you hear the, I don't want to call them servants, the courtiers behind him, they start singing his praises. What does that do? It signifies that he should calm down. You don't expose your leader because we are human. So the secretary of the president should have found a way of toning down whatever the president's anger and transmit a letter that is decorous to Parliament. But if anybody who reads that letter gets angry, you are literally daring Parliament. And the clerk to Parliament is a constitutional officer.
That's right.
Performing his constitutional duty. And you sit there, your appointment is administrative and at best under the Presidential Office Act.
Subject to your notice, not approval.
Yes. And then you do that to Parliament. So for the NDC, that was an affront. But more importantly, you see, the difficulty that puts the president, in my opinion, 80 to 95% of the Ghanaian population are in favor of that bill. It might have implications that a few of us...
Parliament actually approved it by unanimous decision.
Yes. It might have implications that the executive arm will know. For example, it has impact on World Bank funding. It doesn't affect IMF. It has implications. So how do you handle that? That is where diplomacy, tact, and respect comes in.
Samson, diplomacy, tact, and respect.
Samson, I have a little issue.
Okay, so can you let me? Then, if you take the e-levy, so for us as NDC, we are a political party. We are representing a part of the country. And our membership cuts across all classes, all ethnicities.
Right.
And then if we see these lawyers, particularly the Attorney General, who is supposed to be the Attorney General of the Republic, speak for all of us, behave in a way that seems partisan, then of course, we'll have a right to express our opinion.
Right. The Supreme Court has actually had cause to suggest that on certain matters where the Attorney General is still the principal legal advisor to whichever state entity, that state entity can have their own lawyer, because it appears sometimes that the interests may not coincide. Now, Atacha, is it significant that it took the NDC getting this angry about the circumstance before the AG discloses to the public that I am the one who made the application to the court, I'm the one who wrote to the CJ? Because it appears that originally they were under the impression that it was a court's decision so motu on its own motion that they brought the matter forward. Does it change anything regarding the tone of their letter where they said the CJ was biased and seeking to do the bidding of the party?
You see, because the CJ didn't engineer the hearing of the plaint.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
If at the time they were saying this, because they did not have the benefit that it was Godfrey Dami who had written to request for it.
Yes, it should. And it is very, very important that the allegation against the Chief Justice was misplaced, and we should accept it as it is. But let me also tell you something which is very painful for me, being a member of Parliament. If we are not careful, we reduce statecraft to, if you like, the kindergarten level of tit for tat, going to do postmortems about past behaviors and the rest of it. Granted, the president's secretary's letter was terrible. You see, the matured way of handling what is very bad is to not to say, oh, is that what you've done? I'll do the same. So Samson, I'm very, very sad about this tit for tat. It's not good for statecraft.
Okay.
Understand? There's a way that would have looked at it and then we would have avoided.
The speaker's lawyers
yes.
have also written
yes.
to the court.
Yes.
They are written to the registrar of the court,
yes.
asking for an expedited hearing of the injunctions that have been pending since 7th of March.
It is their right to do. You understand? If you are a lawyer and you believe that the process is not being followed, or you believe that there's a necessity for some matters to be heard, you have the right to do. So if you look at an attorney general who has seen that there's been a major error in Parliament, and if it's not corrected, it's going to hurt the running of the government of President Akufo-Addo, and it takes proactive initiatives, how do you fault him for that? And I won't stop any lawyer who wants a matter heard expeditiously.
There's an issue about trust in the judiciary. Should it be minded about that issue when he's taking decisions in politically sensitive, public interest matters like this? How can this be cured so that we don't have a situation where people are thinking, this CJ was brought in to do this and she appears to be doing it? Yes, Atacha.
Yes, I believe that is very critical. You see, because when we have a public-centered matter, not a private one, you see, that is to say, it is not just the professionalism of what we are doing which matters, but how it resonates with the generality of the public. So that trust dimension is so important, so that people have confidence in the judiciary that somebody is not here to do the pleasure of the president. So therefore, whatever it takes to ensure that the matter is very, very clear and is well understood, it should be done. But in this particular case, with the greatest of respect, I can't see how anybody can fault the CJ who didn't engineer the hearing of the application and the rest of it. Because the CJ would have been very derelict in her duty not to have responded to what was coming from the Attorney General. The only problem which has happened is the short service, which I will say as a lawyer and coming to terms with the new dispensation, that no matter how you say it, and my brother was short-served, although he filed the process, it will not detract from the fact that even you might not attend court, insofar as all the processes are before the court now. And this is what the practice has become.
Let me state this about the CJ. It is important I state this.
Quickly.
The CJ put herself in this. I happen to have been at a public function at the Church of Pentecost Convention grounds when former President John Mahama was introduced. The CJ was there. Her body posture. When no. This is so important. No. It is so important. I'm not in a law court. I'm on a political program. It's so important. And it went viral. And so for us as NDC, the body language, the way she made the face, and it's all over the place.
The CJ is human.
Yes.
Through the election petition.
Listen.
You heard the comments that the former president and the NDC made. Unanimous FC and all of that.
I'm making a very specific case. So at a public function, when the CJ does that to our leader, our flag bearer, of course, her subsequent rulings will be seen in that way.
I'm saying, granted that this is actually what happened.
And I was there.
It is your interpretation.
I can produce those.
I'm not saying I haven't seen that.
Yes.
It is your interpretation of her demeanor or posture. But she may explain to you that that is not what you may have misunderstood or misrepresented her. Okay? All right. Now, quickly, I understand the signatures are being collected to force the House to resume, to get back, and approve this ministers.
Let me correct you.
Yes.
It is not to force. It is within our rules.
It is under the Constitution.
We have exercised that and now starting.
When you are requisitioning something, you are forcing things.
No.
It is
the right of MP.
Language.
It is the right of MP.
Okay, let's not argue over language. Yes.
For a recall of Parliament.
It's a constitutional provision of Article 1123.
That's correct.
Yeah, that it has become very important that in view of what has happened, that there was a monumental error which brought about the non-consideration of the ministerial nominations and how eventually it could sabotage the running of the government. Why don't we converge and look at it? So I am of the humble view that it is very, very necessary.
You can't wait until Parliament actually returns?
Well, you don't want to stall the running of the government. Look at the number of ministers that are market time. I mean, and we want results. So the full complement of the government will aid, the running of the state.
There are 24 ministers who have been vetted and deputy ministers who have been vetted and waiting approval.
It is not a
joke.
There
are 7 ministries that are without a substantive minister as we speak.
It's not a joke. And therefore, everybody who believes in running the government, which will also inure to the benefit of Ghana, should be interested that we come back quickly. And even sometimes in very, very critical situations, and even in holidays, Parliament sit to take quality decisions that will help the nation. Okay. Anybody who is fighting that we don't come and sit is stalling the progress of work of the government. And it shouldn't be the case. And it's a bad precedent. It's very expensive. And we'll set a bad precedent that eventually, when you are in power, some people might just erase this ghost called tit for tat, which I believe it's not good for
when are you normally expected to return?
Well,
from this break?
Well, we would have come back probably late April or early May. Because
late April or early May.
Because it's not been formally communicated
yes.
of return.
Yes. So the NDC has used this tool before to requisition a sitting.
No, you see, it is within our rules.
That's correct.
Fair game.
Yeah. Nobody is saying it's wrong.
In a group of MPs, a certain minimum number, and it's a one-item recall by our standing
orders. It's 15%.
Yes.
15% of members of Parliament.
You can only come to do one business.
Meeting. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now let me end with Justice Stremsai and Doc. I was asking earlier that we should look at the very important question. Listen to Dominic Ayene and then respond to that question I had put to you earlier, whether we should not give sufficient education on what ought to be the exception of the general rule affecting the performance of a constitutional or statutory duty. Listen to Dominic Ayene.
If you want a court to give an expedited hearing, there is something we call an application for abridgment of time. You file that, you serve it on the other party, okay? And then they can prepare themselves and come to court on the abridged date, okay? You don't go nicodemously to the registrar of the court or to the CJ, who is the chief administrator of the judiciary, to ask for the thing to be abridged. Then the registry puts the case, abridges time for you, all right, and then serves notice on the other parties to come to court immediately. That is unethical.
How?
It's grossly unethical. Okay, you are subverting the rules, of procedure in your favor, and that is all. It doesn't matter that you're the Attorney General of the Republic. You need to apply, for abridgment of time, and serve notice on the lawyer on the other side, because the lawyer on the other side should not be taken by surprise.
For where he was talking about the question of performance of constitutional duty vis-a-vis the service of the effect of service of application for injunction. Quickly. Hello, Justice.
Yeah. So the video that was played was not in respect of what?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So let's go straight to that question about the need to appreciate the exception to the rule.
Yes, so I think I hold that view as well, that when the Constitution gives a command for something to be done and is given a timeline within which the thing ought to be done, I think in as much as we all agree that the court on the circumstances of the case may grant an injunction either on application, even so much that is by itself, I think there must be a reason why the framers of the Constitution, would give that kind of command and give a time frame. Now, the issue then is, if we apply the general rule of a person being restrained, immediately an interlocutory injunction is filed until the determination of the application for interlocutory injunction. If we apply the general rule, then we should take steps again to make provision for some of the matters to be determined as soon as practicable. So it will result in total misadministration of government, or total running down of government, or halt in government, if we proceed along this line. I mean, the line where someone files interlocutory application for an injunction, and then everyone must stop pending the determination of the matter, regardless of when the application will be moved and when it will be heard. And that, I think, is an obvious flaw in the argument that we keep making, that when the person files an application, everything must stop. I mean, Samson, let me give you a typical example. You are Joy FM, you are running public service, right? You are running a radio station, a TV station. Assuming I have an issue with you, and as part of my case in court, I apply for an interlocutory injunction, and in my relief, I'm saying that to stop transmission. And you have to stop your transmission pending the determination of the case, regardless of whether I even have any merit or whether there's even lawful basis and all that. And that will really be a problem, unless there is an additional requirement that when you file an injunction application, an interlocutory injunction application, you should be ready, or provisions to be made for the motion to be moved immediately. Okay. Otherwise, I don't see the merit in the application of the general rule to all parties. So all matters. And I think that is where we need to start thinking about. It's not enough. Sometimes you see the courts have made decisions on a particular case in a particular circumstance concerning some definite facts or set of facts. And when the court makes that decision and makes statements, it is difficult for us to accept that statement is meant to apply to all situations. So I have not seen anywhere where any court has ruled, that when a constitution gives you a command, you can, once you file the motion, then once you file the motion, then the person who has a command to perform within a certain period of time should stop performing the command. All right. And I think the cases that we have been referring to as authorities for this principle, we're dealing with certain facts that are not on all fours with this. And I think my understanding of stare decisis tells me that when a court gives states a general position in a case, it must be deemed to be in connection with facts that are similar or that are almost on all fours with the same case. Okay. So I am looking for a day when this, and I think these cases present a very good opportunity for the Supreme Court to actually consider all these matters and give us a more clear, position going forward. Okay. Thank you very much, Justice Sramsai. But some will say that is the reason in the rules about injunction, granting of interlocutory injunction, something we have overlooked is the undertaking. That if you say we should stop broadcasting, you give an undertaking and you pay for the cost. If we were stopped and then eventually you lost, you pay for the cost of everything that we have lost. I'm sorry, but we are run out of time. We have to move on. We have to move on. We are run out of time, and thank you very much. And also, in fact, the president, if the injunction pending now is determined, it doesn't change his mind, because before the case, Richard Sky filed the case, he had intimated that Richard Sky had filed the case, which was wrong though. Yes. And said that he will wait until the case is determined. So not only the injunction application. Thank you all very much. Someone attached is MP Abuakwa South and Chairman Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament. Dr. Kwabena Donkor is MP PRU.
is a former minister for power. He also belongs to this committee. Dr. Justice Stremsai is senior lecturer, constitutional law, Gimpa Law School. Joining us shortly is Dr. Yao Osei Educhum, MP Bosomtwe, and Minister for Education. We talk about smart schools. What exactly is that? We'll be right back.
In furtherance of our digitalization agenda in the education sector, government is proceeding with plans to distribute 1.3 million educational tablets to students in senior high schools. That is one student per tablet under the Ghana Smart Schools project. The tablets are fitted with digital contents to aid research, teaching, and learning. At the tertiary level, government plans to provide at a discounted price tablets and laptops to students and lecturers to facilitate academic work. Though largely successful, government continues to seek innovative ways to boost further the free SHS policy. Government is convinced that the next phase of free SHS enhancement will be propelled by digitalization. This will allow a seamless online and offline teaching and learning experience. Indeed, the enhanced free SHS school will be environmentally friendly, boost academic performance, fitted with interactive displays, interactive learning, and increased productivity, which is what has given birth to the Ghana Smart Schools project. The project seeks to deepen the application of IT in teaching and learning at the second cycle level. It will ultimately enhance the performance of students and prepare them better for higher learning and the competitive careers in future.
Right. And the man behind and ensuring that this gets done is right here in the studio, Dr. Yao Osei Educhum. Thank you very much for making time to join us once again.
Thank you for a wonderful opportunity to be on your show.
It appears you have been on the move doing a lot of big things. And this is yet one of such. You're here for this, but I'll shelve that to the next, by the time we are out of this place. So what is it, smart schools? What is it?
Smart schools. Before we get to smart schools, may I take this opportunity to wish all your viewers a very happy Easter, and also to wish my boss, the president, a belated happy 80th birthday. Samson, there's something going on around the world. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. The first industrial revolution, or the revolution of the steam engine, the world was jubilating over the steam engine. Then we move on to electricity. Africa participated. The first president of this republic started building industries to respond to the electricity invention. And from there, we went to the era of computers. Big mainframe computers may not fit into a space like this. Then things changed. Now they are so small. And then we've moved on to the fourth industrial revolution, which is the fusion between the biological and the electrical, artificial intelligence world. And it's estimated that within the next 10 years, 40% of all jobs that we know will disappear. In fact, it is anticipated that in the developed world, it will be about 60% of the current jobs that will no longer be in existence. Our education system has to respond to the fourth industrial revolution. In fact, in countries like Singapore, they are not talking smart schools, they are talking smart nation. About 30 years ago in the United States of America, they were anticipating a smart nation, and in various communities, grants were given by federal government for non-profit organizations to build tech centers where people can walk in and learn use of computers for free so that they can participate in society. So our society with digitalization is being moved in a certain direction. And that direction that we are moving into means that we need to, with digitalized systems, but we have to digitalize our citizens. I saw a campaign by a woman in the United States during this presidential campaign and over there, and that woman was citing Ghana, that Ghana is now using drones to deliver medicine, and how efficient it is, and how Americans should learn from Ghana. So our system is becoming more digitalized. But you look at our school system and the kind of system that are there, if you create a smart nation, a digitalized nation as we are creating, we also have to create a smart school and a digitalized school. So in a smart school environment, the way we teach and learn is different. Learning is more student-centered. You have smart boards being utilized. Recently, there was a video that went viral. A young lady who was talking about her excitement at Bosomtwe Girls, the fact that there was avocado in the classroom, and she was going on and on about excitement, and she even said that she doesn't want to go home anymore. Even when vacation is coming, she doesn't want to go home. She's so happy to be in there. So it creates excitement, but also there are a few things that it does. You see, if you look at what researchers have said, and their research is telling us, somebody like Howard Gardner, a professor at Harvard University, talk about multiple intelligences, generally saying how students are able to retain what you teach them. And he says that majority of our students are visual learners. If they don't see an image, don't see a picture, don't see a video, they are not catching it. How do we teach children in a digital era with a non-digital approach and expect them to then adapt and matriculate, so to speak, into a digital nation? That is why smart schools come in. But apart from enhancing teaching and learning, which is so key, one critical thing is that I define technology as a learning tool as well as a tool to be learned. So not only should you use technology to enhance teaching and learning, that is from a layman's perspective, technology will enhance teaching and learning, great. But learning the technology itself as a learning tool is something you cannot do without having access to the technology. So how do you get students to develop the app that you are using to digitalize the society if they are not being taught software development? And how do you teach software development when you have no computers?
So once again to my question.
Yes, please.
What exactly is smart schools? Is it not just about distributing 1.3 million tablets to the students?
Nope. That is a small piece of the puzzle. You have to create a digitalized environment, a smart environment, a place where when students walk into the school, they can use biometric identifier for attendance, which then populates into the teacher's attendance book, and students do assessment online. Then the AI-infused grading is done, and the grade then goes to the teacher's grade book, where you minimize the use of notebooks and exercise books, and assignments are done online, where you're able to customize teaching and learning in such a way that a group of Form 1 students who come to Form 1, they do a diagnostic assessment. Based on the outcome of the diagnostic assessment, you are able to know that yes, they are all in Form 1, but this student is at a higher level and this student is struggling. Therefore, he doesn't need to do the 10 subjects that everyone is doing. He should take a remedial course in English in order to bring him up to the same level as the rest of the student. And if he's having a reading difficulty, the AI-infused assessment tool is able to tell you that these books are assigned to him to read. After he finishes reading these books, which are, by the way, on the device, he should come and do this assessment. And when this assessment is done, you're able to know if the student is moving up or not. So instead of having students assigned to computer labs. And in some schools, maybe there are 2 computer labs. So if you really want students to go there and do this assessment, it's going to take you 1 year for everybody to go through. You have the device in front of you. Not only are you doing this diagnostics and you are using it to enhance teaching and learning, visual art students can now do design.
We're struggling with school infrastructure.
Yes.
And you are now talking about a new kind of infrastructure.
Yes.
And as I understand, you are seeking to build 100 smart schools. 30 are supposed to be completed by close of this year, and the remaining 70, is it in the next 2 years or next year? Next 2 years.
You see, when you talk about school infrastructure,
solve our basic problems first.
Which are the basic problems? The basic problems, as you alluded to, provide more spaces for students to learn. And this complements that idea of getting more spaces for. So it's not contrary. When you build a smart school, you are creating more seats. So it's complementing the idea of making sure we have more learning spaces. So it actually is not contrary to the idea of building more schools and creating more spaces. You see, you really have to take a look at Akufo-Addo's education infrastructure development philosophy. But before you get to Akufo-Addo, let me briefly talk about President Kufuor. He converted existing schools to high-performing learning environment, Odogono. You have schools like Kumasi Anglican. They all became Category A schools because of his conversion. Edu Senior High School, a number of them across the country. He was able to do that by converting existing schools, adding more facilities to them so that they can move out to become desirable schools. And then after President Kufuor, then came President Mills Mahama. The approach was, let's build new schools. So building new schools, their approach was the day schools, E-blocks. So that was their philosophy for education infrastructure expansion. Then comes Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, who felt that in order to ensure that he provide more spaces for more students to enter into free secondary education space, he will do both. So it's a combination of Kufuor and Mills Mahama in terms of the infrastructure development approach. So if you heard him as he presented the smart schools, not only are we doing new schools, but existing schools. For example, Accra Academy, through the Get Fund formula, there's amount allocated to convert spaces there into smart classroom spaces. So existing schools are seeing intervention under Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. If you go to a school like KSTS in Kumasi Secondary Technical
KSTS, yeah.
More buildings have been put up. In fact, the new buildings at KSTS could have been a separate campus. If you really move them and put them at different locations, it could have been a new school or...
Why are we talking about 1.3 million tablets and not 2.8 million tablets?
Actually, 1.3 was based on the number of students enrolled in senior high schools, right? As of last year, there are about. Now, actually, they're even 1.4. We are talking about secondary education. We are not... You see, if you look at what has happened in this country, when you say secondary, it does not include junior high. In a typical country, most places, junior high is secondary. But in our case, the pre-tertiary education Act says that we have 2 years of KG, we have 6 years of primary, 3 years of junior high, and they are all basic. So in Ghana, by law, secondary is the 3 years of upper secondary, which we're also working on. So it is those students who are enrolled in that space, because in our context, secondary, senior high, that are going to be part of it.
Are you thinking about the challenges that schools in my village in Gambibgo face when you talk about smart schools? You're talking about internet, accessibility.
Yes, please. You see, the thing is this. We have done something very unique. When I say we, the government under the leadership of Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, we have confronted issue secondary education infrastructure without leaving out basic schools. I mean, it will amaze you to know that Arab Development Bank has given us funding. We are building new schools, replacing dilapidated schools, so that you can really create a smart school environment there. It may not be a huge building, but you're talking about whatever small building you have, you can use mobile labs. You can use laptops to teach them what they need to know compared to schools that are in urban areas. About 3 months ago, I got a call from the vice president's office that he went to a town called Azar in Yellow Krobo, and he made a promise to them that there will be a better school. For the school building there is dilapidated. It's unbelievably was in a very bad situation. And today, we have a new school there at Azar, which can function as a smart school environment because the infrastructure is so good. They've roofed it. The CEO, the DCE there called me so excited. Azar in Yellow Krobo now has a new school. Yao Chene, there's a community that we got news report about, and also our district directors compile a list for us. And as I speak with you, the World Bank has given us the opportunity to revamp a number of the rundown school buildings. South Town, Jetokwe, you look at the old and the new. There's a town called Nagode, close to Nyinahin. Look at the old and the new. And then in certain towns, we're also doing the new junior high school, which enables us to decommission all the dilapidated schools in the community, where there are about 7 schools, and bring them to one location. I think some are being shown on your screens. So, Samson, I think it's not an either-or proposition. We have to do both. You do senior high schools, ensure they have the right facilities, but we can't afford to also say that basic schools, primary schools, junior high schools should wait. In fact, as I speak with you, 70% of students who are eligible for enrollment in primary, junior high are in our public school space. 30% are in private schools. And a number of parents will tell you they are not in the private schools because they like it so much, but they are running away from our public schools. I believe that when people pay taxes, they should be giving quality public schools. And in case they want to go to private, it's a choice. But in some places, in some cases, parents have to depend on private because they don't have a choice.
In 2020, under Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh, the ministry spent some 434 million Ghana cedis for 280,000 laptops. And then when you came in 2021, you added some 80,000 laptops at 124 million. That's a total of 558 million Ghana cedis for 360,000 laptops. And these were at the price of 1,000, a unit price of 1,550. What are we looking at in terms of cost?
This is for the teachers.
Yes.
And in fact, they paid through their professional development allowance 70% of it. 30%. And the government paid the rest, which was the 70%. So it was a kind of a different arrangement in terms of the cost and then who was bearing the cost. In the case of the tablet, it's wholly funded by government. No participation from parents or from students. And we have made a budgetary allocation through the GET Fund for the first 450,000 that has come out, that has been delivered to us, ready for deployment in our schools. So that
is what we have on the desk here.
Yeah, this is an example of
all right.
what they call the schoolmate.
Yes.
Student mate one.
Student mate one.
Yeah. So this is what we have here. I think we showed one.
Okay.
Yeah. This is it comes with a keyboard.
All right.
So even though it's a tablet, when you take out the keyboard, it makes it function.
I get it.
Yeah, as a laptop.
So you just fix it here, and then you type from here. But you can also use this.
Yes,
right.
itself. Okay. And then you have the power bank that comes with it. And there's also an opportunity in case lights go out.
Right. Because that was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
for places
panel,
where there's problem with electricity.
There's a solar panel that allows you to charge it using solar in the case of this device. So that is in response to the issue of maybe erratic power supplies at certain times.
Is this part of your attempt to do away with fiscal textbooks and so on?
Yes, in fact, the interesting thing is that all high school textbooks, and there's a new curriculum for high school that's coming. Now, because of the STEM, there are so many new courses. Manufacturing, for example, manufacturing engineering is a new course, and we have people writing the textbooks now for high school. So every one of these will come up with all the textbooks needed by the particular student. So if you're a general art student, all the textbooks that you need will be here. And the interesting thing is that it's not going to be a PDF version of the book. It's an ebook. So there are hyperlinks in it. So if it's your history class and you're talking about the Egyptian pyramids, you can hit a link that will give you the video of Egyptian pyramids and some understanding of what it is and what it stands for. So in essence, you, as a student, don't need to take a hard copy book. Everything will be here. And the company has also purchased the license with publishing, made arrangements. So if it's Akiola book will be here. But the book is now being redesigned to make it an e-book, which means it has electronic features that allows you to get videos of things that have been said. So if there's a past question, for example, you can go to the past questions section. When you click on it, the solution will come to you in the audio or video, so that you get a more adequate understanding of what the concept is.
We are talking about 1.3 million tablets, and you just said you have taken delivery of 450,000 tablets. I understand that is to cost you 112 million Ghana cedis, correct? And why is that? Why is 450,000 instead of 1.3 million?
You see, the 450,000 is a little less than 30%. You see, the deployment is such that it's in phases.
So you do it in 3 phases that you cover for this?
Yes,
okay.
But the first phase, which is hitting the regions and the schools in the next coming week, is going to 30 schools.
Okay.
32 schools in the 16 regions. And that one is the first one that is going out. So once you get to the school, there's a dashboard that informs us that the tablets are here. The whole idea is to ensure that you do a phased approach to deployment and don't get the system overwhelmed. And once you get the first 32 schools done, within a week, 2 weeks thereafter, the rest, which is phase 2, also starts moving to the schools, so that the teachers are being trained. In fact, some have been trained. The 32 schools, they've all been trained.
Right.
And then you have, the good news is that now we have ICT coordinators at high schools. So they are the local level, they are the focal point of the whole distribution. And they are the ones who facilitate the training of teachers and provide just-in-time training for teachers in the classroom. So it's a phased deployment.
I understand the unit price is about 250 Ghana cedis. So that will bring us to about 50 Ghana.
No, not 50, not cedis.
Is it dollars?
Yeah, it's
and in that case, the 112 million, all of it together will bring us to 337 million Ghana cedis that you are investing into this. You already have issues with free SHS, and you need to pump money to resolve the teething issues, and you are adding onto that.
You see, the interesting thing about free senior high school, you see, you can have logistical challenges, and that's not a budget issue. So we have 1.4 million mouths of children that we're feeding a day. You can have a challenge where food may not have reached a certain location in a timely fashion. And you see, headmasters are very creative. I've seen Ashanti region, for example, where I was talking to a Sage Senior High, which is a distribution center So there are times when another distribution center may not have certain items, and they come to a Setruchi to get one for Konongo so that everybody will get. So you have a logistical, you can have a logistical issue, not a budgetary issue. Budget allocations are made. You can have a cash flow issue, not a budgetary issue. So once you facilitate the cash flow and get the funds in a timely fashion, you have what you need. So the idea is very simple. There are some who will say, use that in providing for, and say, no, there's a budget. There's a difference between a budget allocation and a cash flow allocation. And in fact, I can use Get Fund money, which is being used for this, for student feeding. So even if I wanted to, the law does not allow me to tell Get Fund, I need your money to buy food, instead of the tablets that you have allocated funds for in your funding formula. So there's a difference between a cash flow logistical issue and a budget issue. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying that we don't have to streamline our distribution in such a way that we can remove the logistical challenges that may lead to some challenges in terms of food. But even that, you see, recently there were documentaries, and I deployed people. I personally got involved, went to PRESEC. Interesting about PRESEC was that about a quarter of the Adani Hall, which I didn't like, had been converted into a distribution. So when I went there was food everywhere for other schools to come and pick up from PRESEC. So I was saying to myself, can you tell me PRESEC? And I went there, the children were eating bread and eating everything. So what I'm saying, there can be glitches, but it's not a wholesale kind of challenge that you don't have money to buy food. And why do you buy tablets? One, logistical issues cannot be created with non-budgetary allocation.
What some Ghanaians are beginning to raise already that, okay, so if we're going to sink as much as 1.4 billion cedis into this, then the question is, people don't see anything wrong with this kind of progress. It's not something that you can find negatives about. The question is sustainability and the implementation process. There were teacher laptops, there were issues with it. What's the assurance that this will not suffer a similar situation?
My brother, the critical thing is, when you sit at where I sit, you are looking at the sense of urgency that brought you here, the ICT policy that brought you here, which we have, your education strategic plan that brought you here, and what you are doing. I can say that STEM is something that we're implementing very well in this country. Look at the facilities that we've done. Look at the campuses, new ones that we've built. You look at STEM Academy, and you look at what we are doing there. Then the next question is digitalization across the length and breadth of this country. How do you bring digitalization full circle? Full circle means they have to acquire 21st century skills. So when I sit here and go to my office, what I'm looking at is, how do I implement this so well that Ghanaians will see that this has inured to their benefit? That we are creating the 21st century skilled labor force that our nation needs to participate in this fourth industrial revolution.
Laptops are going to get faulty. Who is going to be fixing them in the villages, in the hinterland? Who is going to be taking care of them?
In various schools, what you're going to see is that schools with a certain population, 1,000 or more, will have a center there.
Okay.
When things go wrong, it will be fixed at the school. In fact, what I like
How about abuse of the gadget?
Abuse of gadgets happen all the time. But when students know that literally their lives depend on it, they have to turn in their homework based on this, they are careful. I'll give you an example of what I did in one of my schools in the US. One interesting that happened when I deployed laptops at the time, we were dreading that the students who lose their laptops, in fact, will have insurance on it. It turns out at the end, after 3 years when we evaluated the deployment of laptops in my school in the US, that 100% of the students' laptops were intact. It was rather the teachers who lost.
Oh, interesting.
So you see, sometimes we underestimate the care that students give to things that matter to them. When they know how this matters to them, they are not going to just destroy it. When they know that my homework is not going to be done if I don't take good care of this, and you train them well, and somebody is there to fix it for them, and there's an insurance on it, things work in some very unique ways to really amaze you.
I admit we have had a very limited time and we should be able to explore this a lot more. But there are those who are saying, well, he's seeking to, as it were, take a benefit from this digitalization process to align with the vice president so that eventually he becomes the best match for the vice president.
Do I have
Is that part of your goal?
Do I have that authority?
So that you be the running mate and become the vice president if he wins elections?
This is very interesting. I've never heard anybody ask me about you as Samson. So
thank you very much for
that cannot be.
Spending your morning with us.
Time is up?
Yes, thank you very much. A couple of questions coming up about those implementing this and their relationship or association with companies that have had issues in the previous deliveries and so on. We'll look at all of that subsequently. Once again, thank you very much for your time.
Can't believe time has gone so fast.
Yes.
Thank you for inviting me. And
You're
I hope
welcome.
you invite me again.
We wish you the very best.
Speak about this and many other issues.
Right. Thank you very much. Creating smart schools. How else shall we want it? Except we'll be monitoring how it is implemented so that we take the full benefit because it's the taxpayers' money. Thank you once again. And today, if you see my clothing, this is called exclusive fugu. If you want to wear fugu and you don't want the heavy ones, this is one of the things you can look at. This is by Kunati Clothing. They are found at Adenta Shopping Center, Adenta Down. You can call them on 0244 676732. Kunati Clothing. What you wear counts. And tomorrow at 2 p.m., join me on the law. Amnesty International on Protect the Protest. Professor Vincent Mensah, Professor Mame A.S. Mensah Bonsu, Oliver Bakavomawo, and Bridget Otu join me on the law. Have a good afternoon.